So we'll see how far we get on this next item, which was to take what we had learned and inform future policy discussions. That's why we do after the facts investigations via Public Record Act and discussions with law enforcement to try to make policies that will keep us out of trouble, that'll match the intent of what Oaklanders want. And I'll just first start off with a public apology that for the first time since I showed up to City Hall, Immigration Policy 415 came before this commission, and it is the only document I've never critiqued or offered any amendments to. At that same meeting, we moved to recommend that the HSI MOU be severed, and in my head, I naively just didn't think we'd be here so soon after that vote, and that was a big mistake. And so we need to do, I thought the language in here was correct about not providing any resources. I thought the Sanctuary City resolution was clear about not providing any city resources. But the chief has consistently maintained her position since October 16 that she could provide some assistance. And if she's drawing this bright line, this firewall between, parking assistance on the perimeter, and we feel that that's appropriate, then we need to amend the policies, because I don't think they say that. And so we need this, and there's no due diligence requirement in here, and just, we didn't do a good job with this policy. I don't entirely know where to go with it without the chief's participation and her interpretation and understanding of the Sanctuary City resolution. Do we have any public speakers on this?
You do. On item 5? Yeah.
Yes. So I think I want to hear from public comment first, and then spitball a little bit with the commissioners and see if there's any clear direction where we go. If there's maybe not a clear direction, we table it. We wait for further input from the top, from the chief, and see how to fix these things. But there is just a really big disconnect here. So if we could call for public comment, please.
Sure. I'm going to read all the names. People can choose which order. So Tracy Rosenberg, Pamela Drake, Linda Olvera, Sharon Rose, and Laura Polstein.
Yeah. 5 people turns to 2. You guys are lucky. Okay. Hi, everyone. Tracy Rosenberg from Oakland Privacy and from Media Alliance. Chair Hofer had referred briefly to the Santa Cruz immigration raid in February of 2017. I wanted to sort of stop on that for a little bit longer because I think it might provide a little bit of guidance or relevant information going forward. When I looked into that raid, I found out some things that I did not previously know. For those who may not be familiar, the very basic outline is Santa Cruz is also a sanctuary city. And in February 2017, there was a similar HSI raid that was supposedly a criminal raid, which netted 10 undocumented local residents into various levels of immigration detention who were not targets of any criminal investigation or activity. And of course, since it was a sanctuary city, there was a big uproar, and the police chief and deputy police chief of the town expressed a great deal of anger at ICE and vice versa. About a month after that incident, a report was done down in Southern California by an independent reporter named Robin Urovich, who works for KPCC, and the print version of the story came out in Capital and Maine. She interviewed ICE spokesman James Schwab, who's based in San Francisco. You guys have heard his public comments, and among many other things that he said the following: it's ICE's authority. If we're going to do a targeted operation, we're going to be checking the other people in the targeted location. And Schwab contended that Santa Cruz officials knew all along that immigration arrests would be part of the operation. and the implication is that immigration arrests are part of all HSI criminal operations. So the issue of whether collateral immigration enforcement occurs in a criminal or warrant-based ICE raid, which, as I understand it, has been the chief's interpretation, is relevant, and you don't need to take my word for it. It's ICE's authority, and they are going to do it. So the translation, it seems to me, of your policy, section 415.4, that members of OPD shall not enforce or assist ICE in the enforcement of violations of civil immigration laws, appears to be that OPD cannot enforce or assist ICE, period, in any ICE operation. And again, what I'm saying to you is what ICE is saying about what they do and about what will happen. So I hope that you will take a look at what the policy actually says and how it is that it would actually be followed. Thank you.
I'm not sure. Pamela Drake with Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club and the California Sanctuary Campaign. I'm not sure I signed up for the right one because I expected to sign up for the item on the ordinance on vendors dealing with ICE. But I also recognize that we are we're walking on new territory, and we're having to find our way kind of in the dark. And Oakland is trying to shine a light, essentially, out of the darkness so that our people don't suffer and be ripped from their homes like they have been. So I think there's a number of things we have to do besides support the groundbreaking ordinances that this group has come up with. The idea that we call ourselves a sanctuary city now, when they passed SB 54, we knew it was watered down and we knew it's more of an intention than reality. But Oakland should be able to make sanctuary reality. And if our police department is defying what we are stating as the policy, then we have to take some other measures. For one thing, I'll join with you in that complaint, and a number of us will join with you in that complaint. For another thing, we may have to take out a taxpayer's lawsuit against the police department for how they're expending our funds, because this is not what we asked for. If you are sending police out on the street saying, we have to deal with traffic because there may be gunplay, why are you allowing some other agency to come in that's going to encourage gunplay or allow gunplay on the streets of Oakland? I think we have enough of that already. We don't need another gang in town involved with gunplay, is essentially what they're doing, and we don't need to be complicit in their gangland activities. And if the other thing that has to happen is the city administration needs to get off their butt and get the police commission seated, and that means don't just okay the mayor's appointments, but let's okay the community appointments. The police commission should be looking into this. We have, once again, as we've had for so many years, a police department that operates as if it's an independent entity, and it has to stop.
Oh.
Hi, Laura Polstein from Centro Legal. So just in reference to the OPD immigration policy, we're also in the process of providing the chief some feedback. That was one of the matters that we raised in the meeting last week. So we're going to be providing some detailed red lines and feedback. But I'll just flag a couple of things in case you guys wind up also in the position of providing feedback that really jump out at me. And 415.5, request for assistance from DHS or ICE. The second paragraph makes it pretty clear that this policy contemplates the department responding to ICE detainers. And that's ridiculous because ICE detainers have been held unconstitutional by federal courts now going back 3 years. The California Values Act that was signed today prohibits detainers completely, like full stop. So that should be removed, and it should have been removed before. I will say that through our work with Octobr, Alameda County United in Defense of Immigrant Rights, we've met with other chiefs around Alameda County, and other departments do have similar errors in their policy. The company that puts these out, LexiPro, is often not up to date on some of the intersections between federal and local law in these matters. So that's something we think should definitely be changed. With regard to the 415.7, the U visa and T visa, I'll just note that the information seems correct. It cross-references state law, which is great. And OPD is actually a very good U visa certifier. We've had good experiences with them pretty much across the board. Every now and then there are certification requests that we think are erroneously denied, but we have been able to elevate those, and it's been fine. So they're doing good on that front. If you want to, give them positive feedback, that would be a good area. Thanks.
You have one more speaker. Chloe Brown.
Hi, my name is Chloe Brown. I'm not representing any group, just an interested Oakland citizen. I wanted to make just perhaps one point of clarification for your consideration. I don't disagree with any of the back and forth that's been said today regarding the nature of ICE and the relationship between ERO and HSI. However, in former work, I used to evaluate a lot of ICE and other DHS operations, and my understanding is that while ICE is able, including HSI, to remove people who are here illegally, that's not the limitation of the work that they do. And so I think if you consider some of the other operations which they could be carrying out within City of Oakland city limits, they include things like international money laundering and international arms smuggling. And so I'm not sure how you might draft language that would somehow address that, but I do think that it's true that if you involve them on something where someone could be deported, that's a problem. But how do you then say we're not willing to provide this type of traffic or public safety control for these other operations? So just for your consideration.
Thank you. And I think that's going to be the hardest part for us. You tell me there's child sex traffickers in Oakland. Go get them. I can't probably really think of any worse crime than, sexual slavery of children. But they have a dual nature. And our policy doesn't contemplate how to navigate that dual nature, and we didn't do a good job the first time around. So I don't know if my fellow commissioners have any miracles as to how to solve this complicated problem. We could table this, and just reach out to stakeholders and OPD and try to figure out, bring this back and try to figure it out. You guys have any comments at the moment?
Oh, there have lately been comments and documents in the press that ICE has verified that they are under instructions and quite happy to go into, especially to target regions that have declared themselves sanctuaries, to exercise the full power of whatever power they do have against those communities in particular. And I think this has to be taken into account as we try to work out a policy.
It would be great in an ideal world to partner with ICE on these other areas. Of course, we're all opposed to the human trafficking. We're all opposed to these other types of crimes. But at the end of the day, it's not Oakland's fault that ICE is misrepresenting what they're doing when they enter a jurisdiction under a pretense, a false pretense, and then engage in enforcing a civil immigration offense, right? And detaining people for a civil immigration offense. That's not the fault of Oakland or any other jurisdiction. If you're going to have a partnership, if you're going to work together, and then you're going to ask for help on a warrant with such shaky pretenses that you can't even secure an arrest, then my suggestion would be to sever all connection with that agency, and they're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to continue to protect us from human trafficking. ICE is going to continue, and HSI is going to continue to protect us from money laundering and everything else within their jurisdiction. I don't see any reason, considering the respect that they have afforded to this partnership, that we should really have anything to do with them in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Go for it. No, sure? Okay. Yeah, I think, essentially, when they're operating on false pretenses, it becomes a fishing expedition. And this is exactly why we had to reevaluate Oakland's relationship to the FBI, because of the fishing, like their relationship with Muslim, South Asian, Arab communities. And I think there's no safe way I can't see a safe way to go about this relationship. You know, let them do their own thing, but not in Oakland's name.
I don't know, this whole thing is very confusing to me. I'm trying to wrestle with and still get a clear picture of what happened on the ground versus what was written on paper to spur everyone into action. 25 individuals, I don't, still very unclear to me. And I'm trying to still understand if OPD just provided traffic control, then what spurred the chief of police and her need to make these comments regarding I guess what was the underlying need for the warrant and the action. But to my fellow commissioners' comments, this is going to become a catch-22. Because if you have an outside agency come into Oakland and they behave in the same way, but they bump into an individual inside of the home who is armed like the gentleman in Las Vegas, and you actually have an exchange of gunfire, any Oakland citizen that is struck is going to have a problem, and I'd have a problem for them. So now either one or two things needs to occur. Because even if we sever ties with them, and I'm for that, it's not going to stop them from coming. But we still need to be in a position where we do have to protect the citizens at large, and that's part of OPD's mission. But again, if you're coming, we need to be clear and honest with these search warrants. Don't create a boogeyman and then it not be the case. And then the next time you come, we, kind of soft shoe it, and you end up bumping into someone serious, and you have some mass casualties. And then everyone's pointing fingers at everyone else, saying it's not my fault.
I mean, and again, even with this action that happened in August, it was never Oakland Police Department's responsibility, to prevent that level of violence. There were 25 officers that showed up that were federal officers to deal with this one particular family. I think that really the question boils down to, the feds are going to show up and do what the feds are going to do, right? We don't have any jurisdiction over what the feds are going to do in their law enforcement capacity, and they're going to engage in their law enforcement, actions. And what it comes down to is, are we going to allow an organization, an agency, to come into to Oakland, utilize Oakland's resources when they are lying to us and crying wolf, essentially, in regards to the risk that's being posed? Now, we don't see the search warrants because those apparently are confidential, and the ones that are signed by the judge are confidential. So I'm making my statements on the basis of the fact that there was no arrest and then the outcome. So just supposing the outcome of what happened with the warrant that was issued and then the 25 officers armed on point. That's where my recommendation comes from.
And I think we're going to need to table this and get some hard evidence. I'd really like to see any and all information we can get on the search warrant, because part of the search warrant in the affiant statement, there is a section there that he or she, the officer asking for the search warrant, they provide a threat assessment saying, what kind of resistance we think we're going to meet. And that was part of the reason why I asked, was this a no-knock situation? And I don't think that is ever redacted information in the search warrant. It usually is something that you can get your hands on. So I would hope that we could look at this again, so that we can come across or develop some good policy to address this. Because when they do come, most of the time they don't come, they don't come equipped with the gear to do what an entry team or situation may require. And this is part of the reason why they always ask for the local help, because they have that equipment on site, they have the personnel on site, the deployment is quicker, so you ask for them. So I think that's still something we need to look at in the event that we do have a serious emergency.
One thing I would like people to think about Go ahead, Said, sorry.
Sorry. So, you know, as I'm listening to these kind of exchanges, there are a few things that are coming up to the surface, right? The federal government can do whatever they want. So we've established that. They must have a protocol to protect the citizens around and the property around their perimeter where they're conducting their situation. It's not an Oakland thing, it's a nationwide thing, and not every place they go to has a local police department. So they must have a protocol that they can execute to protect. So I struggle that a local police department is supposed to contain the collateral damage of a higher level entity. So to me, we have absolutely nothing to lose by severing any kind of engagement with ICE because A, they will do whatever they want to do. They don't need permission. We've established that. They better have protocols how to protect the public when they go in. To me, it's just ludicrous. They can't be that rogue and that incompetent or that underskilled to not have that. So I don't see any other data that needs to come before us for us to kind of write the language in the future. So anyway, this is where I'm kind of coming from. And in terms of whether they will take action against international gun trafficking going through Oakland or something like that, I cannot imagine that they would not enforce that situation just because we have a memorandum or no memorandum of understanding to cooperate with them. So I just don't see any downside to it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
What do you think about the consequence, possible consequence of lack of notice? Meaning we no longer get a phone call.
What is the consequence?
Maybe we don't get to film it, document it, raise awareness.
I think that's why we have hotlines, right? I mean, that's why we have partnerships and lawyers and community agencies on the ground that can respond to situations like that. Because where's that phone call going to go to, right? And I think the thing that, just to flag again, what makes ICE different from any of these other federal agencies is that, as was very eloquently pointed out in public participation, any ICE action, even if you're going for one target, that ICE action is inherently able to turn to a civil immigration enforcement action as soon as ICE sees anyone else that they want to question about their status. So I think that in terms of the lack of notice, I don't see that notice necessarily, or I don't know that notice necessarily has already even trickled down to the community players that it would need to trickle down to really have a substantive effect. So if that's not already happening, then really there's no difference.
Besides that, there's a clear history of ICE lying anyway, so it's not clear what the notice does.
Oh, if the city doesn't get a phone call from ICE about what they're going to do, the city will get a phone call when they're doing it from the community. We will get 911 calls. We will get concern from community residents about an operation with individuals with guns drawn in the neighborhood. So we'll get that call. And then if we don't have prior notification, I'm not sure what OPD's protocol would be in responding to that. And I think that there is some inherent value in knowing what they're doing before they do it.
But I think unless OPD is there to stop ICE agents from, harassing other members of the community or keep them from, which they're not going to do. So I don't see any benefit for that.
That wouldn't be the correct time to sort in the middle of an operation like that. That would not be the correct time to try to, administratively dot your I's and cross your T's. I would want OPD there for that rare time where there is something and it's of an exigent circumstance, because I don't want some stray round or some stray occurrence and some kid is hit. And then when everything else boils down, they ask, well, what did the city government do about this? Well, we developed a affiliation clause. OPD couldn't be out there per what the council, approved. personally, I wouldn't want to settle with that. I would want some kind of notification. If you're going to lie to me, lie to me. At least I have to lie on record, and we can deal with the aftermath as long as it's not, great bodily injury. But I would rather have some type of note. I want to know what you're doing in my city, whether you're doing it in my name or not in my name.
So my question to you then is, ICE not allowed to block the traffic going through that street?
Well, see, that's part of the confusion. If you have 25 officers, you can run your own crowd control and your own traffic control. Yeah, well,
you answered my question.
Well, yeah, well, clearly they didn't, and that's why I'm trying to figure out what was the need for OPD to be out there, and why was the need for the chief of police to add all the vitriol to the situation with the comment, unless there's some underlying reason that we're not seeing.
Totally, right. So if they could have brought 30 then with them. If we, dedicated 4 officers to go out there, then they could have brought 29. If they knew they're not going to get a cooperation from us.
Now, one thing, and this is totally a technical thing, as far as the law is, since they're federal officers, wouldn't be technically able to do traffic control in the state of California, but any guy with a gun and a badge, a big picture or numbers or letters on their back usually gets to do what they want to do because they look official and whatever. But
all right, so let's. Are you going to motion on the table?
Yeah, I move that Section 415.4 City Policy be amended to read, the first bullet point be amended to read. It reads now that OPD shall not enforce or assist ICE in the enforcement of violations of civil immigration laws. I move to amend that to read, enforce or assist ICE in any capacity.
In any capacity?
In any capacity, and strike the rest of it.
Is there a second? Commissioner Karamis? Any follow-up questions? Okay. Anyone abstaining? 2. Okay, we got 2 abstain, 1 opposed. Commissioner Johnson? On this amendment, do you guys want to make additional amendments?
I'm sorry, I was taking notes. Could you tell me who abstained?
Commissioner Oliver, Commissioner Katz have abstained.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson has opposed.
Would we have to strike out the second bullet point as well?
That wasn't in my motion.
It wasn't, or
no?
Because then you could assume that if there is another objective, aside from whether an individual is in violation of a civil immigration law, then you could use personnel or resources without striking out that whole thing, right?
Run that by me again.
I think the second bullet point, why it would stay, is because that second bullet point could be independent of ICE action. So OPD would not be allowed to initiate investigations about an individual's civil immigration status. That is separate from enforcing or assisting ICE in enforcement actions.
All right. For the remaining of us that need to vote, yeah.
and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So, ICE agents come in to do whatever, and they bump into something that's too large for the contingent of officers that they have there. Do you not want them to contact OPD and say, we need some help? Or is, okay, this is you guys' mess you created, you clean it up? Regardless of the, the collateral damage that may occur. Is that the position we want to be?
So, I'm sure there are exigent situations, right, where somebody makes a judgment call that the situation warrants that I violate the city's ordinance, let's say, and I take care of the situation, right? And that they would have to just come back and say, you know what, I did it. It was in my professional judgment that I chose to do this because of some really unforeseen situation. To me, that's just the nature of, you can't expect us to know everything, but we do know a lot. We do know that ICE tends to misrepresent the situation. We know they are motivated to target cities like us. We know that they should be responsible and capable enough to secure the perimeter, to do what OPD was allegedly doing. We do know that in this very one situation that it's muddy at best, right? It's not crystal clear. So to answer your question, I'm comfortable with saying enforce or assist ICE in any capacity, knowing that, you know what, sometime somebody may actually violate this. No different than when you see a situation, you're going down the road and you cross the double yellow line to avoid a pedestrian, right, who just walked in the middle of the street. You broke the law. I don't think a police officer will pull you over and give you a ticket. But they might. You go in court and they say, hey, I crossed the double yellow line because it was in the situation warranted it.
Raymundo, you know where my heart and my politics are. I'm asking that you withdraw your motion just to give us more time to think all the way through. And if not, I know this will upset some folks, I would abstain tonight only. So it'll help us to have that time.
I think I agree that the subject is heavy and the proposal is heavy and that we may not have the answer tonight. And so I recognizing that, I would draw my motion for the time being, and hopefully we can address this at the next meeting.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.